How exactly was I able to pay off my $26K in student loan debt, build a net worth of $30K, and move out of my parents' basement by age 26? Hello fam, and welcome to First Gen Money, the YouTube channel for all things lifestyle and money from a millennial perspective. In today's video, we're gonna go through some of the things that I did in order to pay off my debt and build my net worth. Before I get started in talking about the 4 ways that I was able to save the most money, I really wanted to just give you a little insight in my money journey. I will make a separate video to talk about exactly everything about my money journey, but just as an overview, I wanted to go into the little background of who I am and how I got started in my money journey. In 2017, I decided that I wanted to pay off my student loan debt. And I was being inspired by the different stories that I heard on podcasts, and especially the So Money podcast with Farnoosh Torabi. That was like my top listened to podcast. And I wanted to have my own story. I wanted to be able to pay off my debt. So I decided then it was time for me to get rid of my debt. And I was consistent with that until maybe mid-2018 when I realized having an emergency fund is probably a priority for me right now. So in 2018, I then pivoted to saving for an emergency fund. 2019, going into 2019, I knew I had to pivot to be able to save for moving out. In 2019, all these things happened, right? I moved out of my parents' basement, moved in with my boyfriend. I got a raise at work. That was in July. And I also then paid off my student loans. So in all these 3 years, basically, of this debt-free journey, so from September of 2017 to December of 2019, when I paid off my student loans, I did 4 things consistently. It's something you might hear a lot if you're in the personal finance space and trying to get on the debt-free journey, is that people are going to spend the most money in these 3 areas of their life. And that was the truth for me in terms of not spending in those areas. So the first one for me was housing. I, as you probably already know if you've been following me for a while, lived in my parents' basement for a long time after I graduated. So I graduated in 2015, May of 2015. I moved out of my parents' basement in April of 2019. So that is almost 4 years of living at home with my parents. And not everybody has the luxury of living in their parents' basement or living with their families because of many reasons, right? I was lucky that I had a great relationship with my parents and I could live with them. Not everybody can live at home with their parents rent-free. And while I was living rent-free in the sense that I wasn't giving my parents X amount for rent every month, I was paying certain utilities. But even the $400 or maybe even sometimes $200 that I had to put aside a month to help them with the utilities was not what I would be paying if I had my own place or if I shared a place with friends. And so while living at home might not be an option for you, what about living a little bit outside of the city? What about living in a space that isn't as close to the subway as you would like it to be, or living with more roommates than ideal? It's going to be different for everybody, right? You might need to be in a situation that is not your ideal for right now. It wasn't ideal for me to be living at home with my parents, trying to navigate having a boyfriend and wanting to bring him over, but also feeling uncomfortable about being home with my boyfriend when my parents were home, things like that. There's this 30% rule. And it says that you should not spend more than 30% of your gross monthly income on housing expenses. So what is that for you? I'm gonna add a little chart right here. This is from David Bach's book. And it kind of breaks down what that looks like based on your income levels. So what does that mean if you're making 50K, 70K? How much should you be putting towards housing? And in some areas, and I think maybe even the federal government, if people do spend more than 30% of their income on housing, they're considered rent or housing burdened, which means that you are paying more than you should on that. It might make you more susceptible or more at risk in certain situations. So something for you to keep in mind, you need to be realistic about what is possible. So 30% might make sense in an area that's not as expensive as the New York City suburbs or New York City in general. So take that with a grain of salt. But I think it's a good baseline for you to determine what makes sense and what will allow you to keep saving and investing for future goals and not just living for right now. Okay, so now for number 2, transportation costs. What is it costing you to get from point A to point B? When I was living at home, and it's really funny when I say when I was living at home, because now I'm like, I'm living at home, but it's not my home, it's my boyfriend's home. But anyway, when I was living in my parents' basement and commuting to New York City, I was very fortunate that we had a bus right at the corner of my house that took me directly into Port Authority in New York City. It was almost a 2-hour bus ride each way because the traffic in the Lincoln Tunnel is just amazing, never fails you. But there was a bus right there that would take me into work, and when I wasn't working, I just didn't have a car. And it amazes people that are living in this area in North Jersey when you say, like, I've just never really had a car. There have been times when I've needed a car. I can't say I haven't needed a car because there are many times when I have needed a car. But I have found a way to survive without owning my own vehicle for more than 5 months, because I did own a car right after I graduated, but I sold it right away. That's a different story. I've really never had a car in North Jersey or in my adult life that I can say that I've truly had consistently, like my own car. And that has saved me a lot of money in terms of maintenance. And when I did have a car, it was a used car. So if I decided to lease a car, it's like car payments, then it's your gas, it's your insurance, all those costs associated to owning a vehicle that when I was, working in the city and living at home, I didn't think made sense to have for 2 days out of the week, because Monday through Friday, I was in New York City. Saturday and Sunday, I'd be home. So what was the point of having a car sit in the garage for most of the time? It didn't make sense. So I decided I'm not going to get a new car. I'm not going to get a car, period. So I decided to not have a car and be carless. And I was able to do this because of that bus that was down the street from my house, like right there. I was able to do this because there was not only the New York City bus, but also the Newark bus that I could take. So like Newark being the closest like city in my area outside of New York City, also provided with a little transportation hub if I needed to get around. Lyft and Uber, which I don't use, but Lyft was already in 2015 becoming more popular. I was already using the app. I was getting more comfortable. It was becoming like a normal thing that people did. So that was something I could have an option for. I also lived at home, and my parents both had their own car, stick shift, but a car nonetheless. So I had to learn how to drive a stick shift, and I barely drove because the anxiety of having to drive a stick shift when you live in a hilly area, that's another level. But I was able to go on because of the different resources that were available to me. And so I didn't need to own my own car. And I still don't own my own car. And now that I'm back in the suburbs and I'm back in a basement in a parent's house, I'm having more of those conversations like, do I need a car now that, who knows, maybe my work will be work from home until the foreseeable future. What does that mean for me to have a car? Or can Ari and I share his car that he still has? So still something I'm having a conversation about. And I think transportation costs are really important for us to think about because they eat away our monthly spending money, right? And even though I took the bus into the city, I still needed to get from Port Authority to Union Square, which is about 30 blocks. I decided, how do I save more money commuting into the city? I'm not gonna do unlimited metro. Yeah, sure, it's only $121 a month, but I'm already paying close to $400 to take the bus here. That would make my commute $500-ish, and that's crazy. So I decided I was gonna get a city bike, and I would take the city bike from Port Authority or wherever. Sometimes I had to walk a few avenues to find a city bike that was available down to Union Square. And I did it, and it was good for my physical health. Probably not my mental health. I always thought I was gonna get hit by a car, but I didn't, and I made it out okay. And that saved me. I did that for almost a year. Saved me over $1,000 just by doing that. So what are some of the things when it comes to getting yourself from one point to the next where you can save money? Do you really need to have 2 cars if you have a partner who also has a car? Can you reduce that expense and make it just 1 car? Can you walk instead of take the subway? Can you walk instead of take a Lyft? I'm moving along to my third category that I had to level down on, and one of the areas where people spend the most money is food. Oh my gosh. Isn't food quite important? I am a vegetarian, and I have been for the last 2 years, but before that I was a pescatarian, and I haven't eaten meat, I guess, since 2012, since January of 2012, because it was my New Year's Eve, kind of like, I'm not doing any more resolution, and so I've been meat-free since then. And what I've noticed is that since I started this vegetarian lifestyle, I have been, in the beginning, I was buying a lot of processed foods. I was buying my fake chicken nuggets or my fake whatever, and that was really expensive. As a freshman in college eating that kind of food, it was just too much. And now when I look at what I eat, it's a lot of fresh vegetables, it's a lot of fresh food and less processed, which has saved me so much money. But another thing that has saved me a lot of money is not eating out as much. You know, when I started my debt-free journey, I was always bringing my own lunch to work. I was that girl who would go with you on the walk to get your food, but I wouldn't order anything. I would leave my wallet behind so I wouldn't be tempted. But I would always go on the walk, of course. That was this part of socializing as a, entry-level employee. You're gonna go with your badge, you're gonna walk with your colleague, talk about whatever frustrations you're having at work. But I didn't have to buy anything, and I always brought my own lunch because I knew that was gonna save me money in the long run. It was gonna save me from that $12 lunch every day at work, and it was gonna help me get to my goal. And so I always brought in my own lunch. I remember Wednesdays were a big day in the office at my first job because we were able to order seamless and just have free lunch on the company's tab. And that was my one day to indulge, and that was all I needed to be okay bringing my lunch in the other days. I continued that habit until this day. I've always been that person who brings her lunch from home, always. All my coworkers will tell you, when they see me eating out for lunch, it's what are you celebrating, Dannielle? Because I make it a special thing for me to eat out. Or maybe a lazy thing. Let's say I've had a rough weekend and I just didn't get the chance to meal prep. So it really depends. But eating at home, eating home cooked meals for lunch went a long way in getting me into the habit of being okay eating food from home. Eating more at home, making more meals, these are habits that you get into. It's not going to come easy, especially if you're eating out all the time now. Start small, be realistic with yourself, but incorporate that into your life because it is going to save you a lot of money in the long run. And it's going to help you do my next point, which is living a more sustainable lifestyle. That It's a little rare to say that, but it really helped me save a lot of money because everything and every choice that I made was going back to like, how is this helping our earth, right? So for instance, when I said I didn't want a car and instead I would bike from Port Authority to Union Square, this was also because I was thinking about the planet. Did I really need to have a car? If I was gonna have a car, did I really need to have a new car? All of the reasons that helped me save money were also things that were sustainable. And thinking about sustainability when it comes to the products that you buy or how you buy them can really help you save money in the long run. And I wrote an article about this, but one of the many ways that I've been able to save money through my sustainability lifestyle has been just, I don't really buy clothes anymore. I have never really bought new clothes. Like, sure, there were a period of times when I would go to Forever 21 and buy new clothes. I've always thrifted. You know, thrifting has always been part of my life, but now I'm doing even less thrifting. A lot of the clothing that comes into my life is used clothing from friends, from family. It's stuff that I don't have to pay for. And I think because I've gotten into that habit of always asking people like, oh, hey, do you have something I can borrow for this wedding I have coming up? I've kind of removed that stigma around people feeling like, okay, maybe Dannielle might want this, because people now know that like I'm gonna be more likely to want to ask to borrow something than buy my own. And that's simply been, yes, to save money, but also because why do I need to buy a new item if you already have a great working one that's going to do the job? So sustainability has been huge for me. It came into my life really in 2015, 2014, and I started small. I started with not buying any more plastic water bottles, but it has now become part of the lifestyle and the decisions that I make that then potentially help me save money in the long run. So those are like the 4 main areas where I like really cut back and said, I'm not going to spend money here because it's going towards my student loans, towards my emergency fund, towards my IRA. And this might not fit your lifestyle perfectly. Of course, like I said before, not everybody has the privilege of living with their parents. Not everybody has the privilege of having public transportation available to them. But with what you have available, what options are possible for you to reduce the amount that you spend on these areas of your life? So let me know what that looks like for you. I'm curious to hear about it. And if you really enjoy this video, I am asking you to like it, to hit subscribe, to share it with a friend who might need it. And I look forward to seeing you in my next video.